And number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 all behave the same way apparently. The instructions say solve the following for the indicated variable. So what we're doing here is working with basically literal equations. And as I look over these, I have an issue with one, but I am hoping it will resolve itself looking at my answer key. So let me go ahead and just start working these out. So I'm going to start with number 4. A equals BCD for D. So that is just a basic equation. A equals BC times D. All right, so basically all I have to ask myself is, what variable do I want? I want this variable D. What is happening to it? It's being multiplied by B and by C. So what is the inverse, or what undoes multiplying by B and C? Well, that would be to divide by B and C. So by doing that, I'll effectively get it out of the right side. But whatever I do to the right side of my equation, I have to do to the left side of my equation. So what I have now from left to right is A divided by BC, or B times C. My equal sign falls down. B times C divided by B times C is 1 whole, so that leaves me with a single, or 1D. I have no other further information, and I have the variable isolated that I wanted, so there's my answer. For number 5, I'll just go ahead and rewrite it over here instead of referring back to the document. Number 5 says 9x minus 3y equals 18. Now, as I look at our answer key that came with this, I'm going to suspect that they want us to find y. So we're going to go ahead and solve for the variable y, because I believe that aligns with one of the answers we have here. So to get y by itself, I just basically ask myself, all right, what is happening to my letter y? So an old trick I used to show kids who are having difficulties was kind of like make a little t-chart. Here I have the letter y, that's the variable I want, and I'm going to talk about what's happening to it. Y is being multiplied by a -3 right here, because you have to take the sign. So that's the first thing I see happening to y. It's being multiplied by a -3. That's what my little star symbol means, multiplication. And then I see we have this 9x that's in front of it. Well, this 9x is positive, so basically positives and additions work the same way. So we have a 9x that's being added. These are the first two things I saw happening to my letter y. Well, in order to get y all by itself, I'm going to have to do the inverse of both of these things. For example, the inverse of multiplying, or the opposite of multiplying by -3, would be to divide by a -3. I'll put in parentheses there. The opposite of adding a 9x would be to subtract a 9x. And since I'm doing everything backwards, I'm also going to use these two steps in backwards order. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that 9x by subtracting a 9x from both sides. So I go minus 9x here and a minus 9x here. When I do that, 9x minus 9x cancels out, and I'm left with this -3, or now a -3y. Equal sign falls down. I have a whole number 18, and I have a minus 9x. Well, I like to have my variables first, so I'll just write it as a -9x, and since this is a positive 18, I'll add it on as a plus 18. You'll see why in a moment. Now I still need to get y all by itself. So in order to do that, I will divide both sides of my equation, like it says right here, by a -3. So I'll divide by -3 here, and everything by -3 here. So here's the final effect. -3 divided by -3 is 1 whole, or a single y. My equal sign falls down. -9 divided by a -3 is a positive 3, and the x just comes along for the ride. That's the first part of the math I did right there. Now I have a positive 18 divided by a -3. And if you have difficulties with the signs, just use your calculator. A positive 18 divided by a -3 will give you a -6. Therefore, our answer is y equals 3x minus 6 when isolated in this equation. And this does coincide with our answer. Now let's go ahead and move on And let's look at let's see now, number 6. So number 6 gives us the equation for circumference C equals 2 times pi times r. And we're going to treat each one of these just as separate characters. We want to get r all by itself. This is just a semicolon, by the way, not a j, so don't let that confuse you. So to get r by itself, I'll ask myself what's happening to r. This one's pretty simple because the same thing's happening to r. It's being multiplied by 2 times pi, or 2 pi. Well, what is the opposite of multiplying by 2 pi? And that would be to divide by 2 pi. So I'll divide everything on the right side by the thing I don't want, the 2 pi. And I'll divide the left side by that same exact thing to keep my equation balanced. My final result is C, circumference, divided by 2 pi equals 2 pi divided by 2 pi, 1 r. So a single r. And that is my answer right there. Let's go ahead and move on to now number 7. For number 7, we have the equation the inequality 2x minus 4y less than 16. And they want us to isolate y all by itself. So we treat it just like we did any other equation. So since this is a two-step equation, remembering what happened before, I know that I'm going to want to get rid of the stuff furthest away from the thing I want, which is the y. So here I have a positive 2x, so I would subtract 2x's from both sides of my inequality. The effect when I do that is 2x's minus 2x's gives me a 0x's, so they just go away. I have this minus 4y. It was a subtracting of 4y. Now it is treated as a negative 4y. My less than symbol comes on, falls down. And then I have my variable first, which is a negative 2x, with this positive 16 attached at the end. So I'll treat that as a plus 16. Now I still need to isolate y. It is being multiplied by a negative 4. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 4 would be to divide by negative 4. Because doing the opposite operation will isolate your variable. So I have negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1y, or 1 whole y, which I can just show as a single y. And then now I have to go into the math over here on the right side. I'll discuss the symbol in just a moment for a very important reason. Negative 2x divided by negative 4. This is basically the fraction negative 2 over negative 4. Well, that fraction can be reduced to a positive 1/2. So I have a positive 1/2 with an x attached to it. Now I have a positive 16 divided by a negative 4. And if you use your calculator or know your signs, positive 16 divided by a negative 4 gives me a negative, or in this case, a minus 4. Now here was the trick. Remember, whenever you're solving these inequalities, if you ever multiply or divide by a negative number, like we have exactly in this example, your sign has to flip direction. You will always be given the wrong answer with the flip sign the other way, hoping that you would fall for that trick. So remember, whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, when solving your equation or your inequality,